Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Eric Lecain, and we are talking about interesting stories that happened this week. And I am joined, as always, with Mr. Dan Kang. Now, the question we ask every single week, where in the world is Dan Kang?
Well, I am back at my motherland home of Korea, back in my messy home.
Now, for all of you out there that don't know, Dan normally is in Manila in the Philippines, as am I. But for some reason this week, we are both out of town doing our stuff outside around the world. But we still are able to do the show live in Manila via Zoom, which has been giving me trouble all day. But anyway, it's working now, or at least I hope it is. So, but how are things there in Korea, Dan?
Well, I was hoping it would be nice and springy, but right now it's almost near fall, winter. It's pretty cold and rainy and miserable. So I am indoors and driving my truck instead of my motorcycle.
Which it's funny, Dan, that you should say that, because I actually happen to be on tour right now, and I am in the United States, and it is freezing, and I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt, but wish I was wearing a coat because it's really cold for some reason in the United States right now. Everybody here is getting a cold because it's rainy and wet and cold now in the United States.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking a little earlier about your friend that you were saying that from the Philippines, that you were worried that she might have tuberculosis. And that's a subject that I every time I jump on that subject, because, in the United States, we don't have tuberculosis anymore. When's the last time we had tuberculosis? We don't have it anymore here. But it is still running around the Philippines, and a lot of people still getting it.
I mean, it's so uncommon that I had forgotten all about TB and all of the factors. Highly contagious, but hard to get. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
But it's there used to be an inoculation for that. A vaccine, but I don't think they even give it in the U.S. anymore. I've had it because back in our days,
I had it when I was a kid, but I don't know.
Right.
It's funny. It's a funny thing about inoculations these days about what which one to take and which one not to take, and people are like, "Why do I need to take the polio vaccine?" Because polio has been. When's the last time anybody had polio? Well, it turns out just last month somebody had polio in the United States. So, in fact, there's quite a few cases of polio now in the United States. It's kind of trying to make a comeback there. So they're trying to make sure that they get kids inoculated for things like that. In the Philippines, that's a whole nother issue.
Sure. And I think the TB inoculation was combined with the pox, I think. You got the scar on your shoulder or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
it's been so long, I can't remember.
Back in the old days.
We talk about, vaccine cards and stuff like that. Well, hey, man, like when you registered for school, you had to have a vaccine card, right? You remember that, right?
Yeah.
And we had to get vaccinated, we had to have the card, and we had to flash the vaccine card. I mean, we could be anti-vax and all that nowadays because the current generation don't know the struggles that the previous generations went through.
Yes, the struggles that we went through. And now I got to show a freaking card every time I get on an airplane.
Exactly. Wow.
But anyway, I hope your friend is doing okay there. Because in the Philippines, it's still an issue about tuberculosis and other, chickenpox and other issues or things that are going on there. And I hope that in the Philippines that people do decide to get their child immunized, because I think that is a very important thing, not just because they need to go to school or it's good but it's just good for the kid. Now,
I don't know what the cost is either, though. I mean,
I know, it should be free. It should be free. I mean, in the United States, it's still free. But anyway, speaking of things that we need to get inoculated from, Dan, It's an interesting thing in the news these days. And we're talking about back when, in our day, back in the good old days when Dan and I were young and, beer was a nickel.
Drinking water out of the garden hose.
Drink water out of it. But it used to be, the news was the news. And you flip on the TV at 6 p.m. for an hour, and some person and their friends, they tell you stories about what's going on in the world. And then things changed, and then something came along called cable news, a little company called CNN. They came on, decided to do the news, a 24-hour-a-day news. People would think, that's crazy. Who's going to watch the news for 24 hours a day? Well, then a lot more companies started doing that, and then they started having news-only channels, and eventually it became a thing. And then somewhere in the 2000s, they figured out something else. Let's tell the news, but let's make the news more interesting. Let's add drama, get people to cry, get people to scream at each other. And then that was a big thing. And then somewhere in the 2010s, they had another idea. Let's really push opinion shows. People that come on and say what a certain group or political affiliation wants to hear. We'll push that way of thinking or another based on how we say the story. It's kind of like pro wrestling. I mean, it's wrestling, but it's not real wrestling. Anyway, then, Dan, in the 2020s, I think the news channels were like, oh, what the hell? Let's just lie outright to the people. Let's not twist the truth. Let's just tell straight out lies to the people and get them to see if we can get them to believe it. Because, we figured out that making people mad and fearful and hateful, it gets more people to watch our network. And so we will tell lies, even if we know they are untrue and hurtful to society, but who cares, because it makes us billions. So now to our
exploitation, exploiting people's emotions.
Absolutely.
Reaction.
It's the new way of telling the news, which now leads us to our story this week, which is that one of the most successful guys in the history of doing just this, he was the number one talk show host for Fox News, the guy named Tucker Carlson. He would say just about anything. He defended Putin, saying, should we hate Putin? Maybe we should like Putin. Putin never called me a racist. He never threatened to get me fired for disagreeing him. He said, criminal white supremacy and right-wing domestic terrorism don't exist in the United States. And that what we saw on January 6th was just cherry-picked clips, that rioters were actually peaceful protesters. That the 2020 U.S. election was rigged, and that the voting machines were set up to move votes from Trump to Biden, even though privately he said exactly the opposite of that. He praised Trump as a sensible and wise man, yet in private, he said he hated him and that he was the worst president ever. He said women were extremely primitive and basic, and they hated weakness, and they're much like dogs in that way. And this was the number one host on Fox News, getting 3 million viewers per night.
You have to believe that less than what's coming out of his mouth is more. He was like a cartoon character, like he was like entertaining, dangerous but entertaining. I don't even know if they conceive how dangerous it can be with what they're saying, but he was like a cartoon. I mean, you could watch him as long as you had your cartoon vision on. You could laugh at the guy, right? Like, I mean, sensationalized.
When he would come on and say, your trouble, the reason you're having so many problems is because of the black people. and that is the number one show on Fox News. Mostly it was for men ages 35 to 65. But then, something happened this week that we didn't expect. Something that no one ever thought that Fox would ever say, you know what, of all the stuff we have done on our network, enough. And they fired him. They got rid of Tucker Carlson, the number one guy. And I think, this comes right after the Dominion voting lawsuit in Fox got settled, and they were suing Fox, of course, for $6 billion for saying that the U.S. election was, fraudulent due to, and the voting machines were flipping votes from Biden to Trump. And Tucker Carlson was one of the guys that pushed this. And then they found out that Tucker Carlson really didn't believe anything that he was saying. And then he knew that he was lying, and he was saying it anyway. And so Fox finally decided to settle. And, that by the fact that this woman, producer in Fox, is suing who worked for Tucker Carlson because of the way he treats women and the way that his other producers treated women. Fox finally said, you know what? Enough. We've had enough of this guy. He's out. He's fired. And I can't believe it.
But they created this character as well. I mean, as much as personally, I don't know who he is, but, outside of the camera, right? But, Fox has that responsibility as well, accountability, that they created this monster as well. Right. So,
Fox has pushed this, what I was talking about earlier, that in the 2020s, you know what? Let's just outright lie, because it makes us billions. It makes us billions of dollars in viewers. Because, think about it. This guy who, the things he would say about women would just make your mouth open. But so many people want to hear that. And 3 million viewers a night. He's the most popular guy. He was in the primetime slot. And, finally they said, oh my goodness, and now Smartmatic is suing Fox for $2 billion. And you know what? They're going to win, or they're going to settle for some ridiculous amount like Dominion Voting did. And how much more money, how much cash can Fox give up to keep these guys on board? And I think they finally said, all right, listen, we got to get rid of this guy. And it was fast. Tucker Carlson was on Friday night, and he said, okay, I'll see everybody on Monday. And then he didn't show up on Monday.
Well, one of the twisted things as well is that the 3 million viewership, out of that, there's a large percentage that watch him just because they hate him. So, that's no, seriously, they want to see what they hate. And this should tell you the society in general where we're at. Like, you will watch something not because you like watching them, because you hate them. You have to watch them.
Well,
that's what's instilled in our society right now.
What I find fascinating about this is that, like I said, when you and I were kids, Dan, we watched the news. That's what it was. What they said, that was the truth. That's what it was. Now, on Fox, and I don't want to pick on Fox. Okay, right. I do want to pick on Fox, because Fox does this all the time. They lie. They know they're lying. We know they're lying.
You can pick up
but we want to hear the lies. We want to believe things that are not true. And this is what our society, it is becoming to us now, is we don't want to hear the truth. Wait a minute, just let me keep flipping the dial on the television set. Okay, man, you don't flip the dial anymore. You push the button. Because until I can hear something I want to hear, even though I know it's not true.
Well, the what's really the way they sell that, and what's brilliant, is that they mix the truth in with the lies. So it becomes a little bit complicated. And like, there was a time where I couldn't even tell the difference between CNN, Fox. It was all jumbled into one big mess.
Yeah. Although, the stuff that goes on Fox, people go, well, MSNBC and CNN, they all do it. No, they don't. They do some, but not to the level of what I have seen on Fox. And, some of these other fringe networks like OAN, Okay. It's fine. They say things that are absolutely untrue, but you know what? They're not, on the main cable networks. And Fox, I think, has a responsibility. And, do you think that Fox has learned its lesson? No, probably not. But now at least their lesson is costing them a lot of money, that they realize, we may have helped push the deadly January 6th, riots that happened in the Capitol by continually saying that the election was rigged and, Donald Trump, the election was stolen from him. And they knew that, because all this, these recordings and all these things, emails have come out, that they knew that was a lie. And they said it anyway, because like you said, the guy is sitting there, the white guy who's between 35 and 65, who the main guys that watch Fox, they're sitting there flipping through the stations. I want to find something that tells the lie that I want to hear, because that's what I want to be the truth. And this is where we are now. We don't care about what the real news is. We just care about what someone is saying that we want to hear.
All of that. I mean, even during the rioting days of the entire country of America, there was all kinds of coverage of just ridiculousness. The way they were covering that as well, right? And so, that's about when I stopped listening to all of it.
When people are smashing windows, when they're smashing windows and threatening to kill people, and Fox is saying, well, they're not really, they're really just tourists. It's just these ridiculous things that they were saying, and we were watching it live on television. So that's one of the things that I just think is it's gotten to the point where if you come on television and you say, well, these riots that you're seeing, they're peaceful protesters, is what Tucker Carlson would say. And we're like, we're looking right at it. I'm looking right at it. But if you're, a Trump supporter or whatever, Tucker Carlson supporter, you're like, oh yeah, maybe he's right. Maybe those guys are just, maybe that is, Antifa, or maybe that's the FBI set that up, or all those crazy conspiracy theories that they were saying at the time. So this is where the direction that news has gone now, is that it's dropped to the level where it doesn't matter anymore what really the truth is. Although now the lie is costing you $787 million.
Well, it's been on a downward slope, like you said, since, for the last, 8 to 10 years, right?
Yeah, like I said, in the 2010s is when it started.
Those of us that have lived through those ages watched that slow degradation.
We've lived through a lot of ages. Dan and I.
The slow moving chain wreck.
Dan, it's interesting. We're talking about through the ages, and we've seen the news, transfer from one kind of thing to another kind of thing. And it reminds me of, when people are always saying, they use the word young when you tell them your age. You say, well, I'm this old. And they go, oh, you're 58 years young. I hate when people say that. I hate when people say that.
Peter Jennings. Oh, Barbara Walters.
Oh, you're 58 years young.
One of those guys. Dan Rather. Those were the days.
Anyway, which leads me to another story, which is a big story this week. I'm in the United States, so I'm in the United States for another couple of days, and I got to go back to Manila. But the fact that this week, Joe Biden, the current U.S. president, has announced that he is indeed running for president again, and wow. Joe Biden is 80 years young. Oh, I hate when people say that.
That's what we need. What we need. Yeah.
And, that means that Joe Biden will be 82 at the time of the election. And, the people were speculating whether he was going to run for office because he's old and frail. The number one reason why the Democrats didn't want him to run was because he's old.
Yeah.
And, and his opponent is Donald Trump,
Another
which,
old guy. That's what we need. More old dudes.
it's,
Old.
and
Like,
once Joe Biden, he came out with the announcement. He said, I'm going to run for president. And Donald Trump immediately jumped on, made a video saying, if you took all the worst presidents in history and you put them together, Joe Biden would still be worse than that. And then he proceeded to spew a bunch of mistruths and things that are typical Trump stuff. But I mean, in looking at it, in hindsight, I'm looking at it, okay, it's hard enough being 80 years old and being the president. But being 80 plus years old and running for president, and being 80 plus years old and running against Donald Trump, that right there will stress you out enough to give you a heart attack.
There has to be someone else. There has to be someone else. There has to be. There has to be.
And here's an interesting point, Dan, and this is going on what you just said. This is another, I find, fascinating thing in the United States, that Joe Biden, a guy who will be 82 years old at the time of election, and freaking Donald Trump are the best we got. That's what we got for running for president.
Well, we said that the last time. And all the candidates were still, I mean.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, this is what we got. This is what we got to look forward to in the United States. And, and we got, the debates coming up. And if you remember back in the debates of 2020, I mean, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump went off the rails and started shouting over Biden every time he tried to answer his freaking question. And then the second debate, this is the U.S. presidential debate. We had to put a button. They had to put a button on Trump's microphone. So if he started talking out of turn, they could hit a button and turn his mic off. These are the people that are running for president in our next election.
Well, Biden had trouble even forming a comprehensible sentence. So
I mean, it's tough. It's tough. And I got nothing against, Joe Biden. Joe Biden reminds me of every other president that we've had. He does the things that presidents do. He's not in the news. He's not in the news, all the time, because he does what president does. Donald Trump was in the news every day, every minute, all the time, saying something insane about something, threatening some world leader or, just crazy stuff. And, people go, well, Joe Biden's just like any other president. He was like Obama and Bush and Reagan.
For the camera in the news. Honestly, I really don't think he has a mental capacity at all. I mean, physically, we know that he's pretty frail.
Pretty frail.
So, I mean.
And I like how they put him on trips. Like they send him on trips all the time to make him look like he's, on the go. And they give him those sunglasses. Those aviator sunglasses to make him look cool and hip, and he's still Joe Biden.
Do they have a body double? Maybe they got a whole troop of body doubles that they're using. Well, I don't know. It's just crazy right now.
I think that it would be hard to get a body double for Joe Biden. It'd be hard to get a body double for Donald Trump. You're gonna get a guy that big. Hey, he's a big guy. But I noticed that they're always, I see the cameras all the time, and they're always showing Joe Biden now in a jogging suit, and he's up every morning, he's going jogging. And I think that's great and wonderful and everything, because, the Republicans, if they go after Joe Biden's age, they got to think about this, because they're going after a lot of voters who get mad when you start talking about old people like that. So they got to think about this.
Who doesn't? I get mad when people talk about age.
I can't stand when people, oh, you're 58 years young. Shut the heck up. But
I think after 40, you do that. After 40, you all start getting overly sensitive about age.
But the only other person that's running for president right now in the United States is Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley is polling at what, 1%? Or less than 1%. Yeah. And she came out and said both these guys are unfit. Both these guys are unfit to run. Freaking Trump will be 78 years old. Trump will be 78 years old.
I just have to wonder if it's not that we can't find anybody else, is that nobody wants the job.
I mean,
like we talked about Like we talked about the Korean presidents, right? Like we jailed like the last.
You put your guys in jail, which we're trying to do to Donald Trump right now. But I mean, so right now in the United States, we have a choice between an old man and a crazy old lunatic man. And I said this to a friend of mine before when they were making a joke about it. I said, it's like a choice between a shriveled up old rotten apple and Donald Trump. Because the shriveled up old apple, it won't taste that good, but it won't kill you. So which you going to pick? The old rotten apple, or are you going to pick Donald Trump? I mean, not to say that Joe Biden is a rotten apple, but I'm just saying, it's.
I do have to give credit that I didn't think he was going to last this long.
Neither did I. Neither did I.
Not being.
I didn't think he was making it through the whole 4 years.
Physically last this long, mentally and physically.
They are pumping him full of steroids or something to keep him going. But
yeah. Well, I mean, his wife is a doctor.
Oh yeah, that's true. She's a PhD. But meanwhile, I mean, the guy that Biden is running against. By the way, you know what? If they picked anybody, any other Democrat, they would beat Donald Trump, because right now Donald Trump, he's dealing with a rape case. If he loses that, that's going to be a big hurrah moment for the Democrats. But this summer they are going to charge him in the Georgia prosecutor has already alluded that they're going to probably indict Trump for asking for 11,000 votes under the table to help him win the election. It's election tampering. I mean, that stuff is illegal. He's got the indictment right now in New York. He's got the $250 million lawsuit that's coming up as well in New York. He's got that legal case going on down in Florida now. I mean, by the time we get to the election time, I mean, either Trump is going to be, he's going to have so many indictments against him, or he's going to be in jail or something. So anyway, this is what we got going on in the United States right now. And meanwhile, Dan, while all this is going on, the Congress is trying to pass something. And I brought this up because I'm sure that you would have an interesting thing to say about the United States legislation. They tried to pass a bill this week, or they registered a bill trying to protect children on social media. And what they are saying is they want to keep children under 13 from being on social media to protect the children. We got to protect the children. So, I mean, what 13-year-old kid, when you tell that kid he has to give up Facebook, boy, that is going to start a war. I mean, we're worried about Taiwan and the Ukraine. I mean, trying to take Facebook away from a 13-year-old. Yeah,
that's not going to happen. I mean, maybe if they lower the age to 9.
To 9? I mean, I can see that.
It's already too late. Let's put it that way. It's already too late.
I mean,
if they would have nipped that at the bud for the beginning, maybe, but it's already too late. I mean, during MySpace, remember before Facebook, there was MySpace? Okay.
What the heck happened to MySpace? I loved MySpace.
Yeah, that's when we should have caught that. I actually went on MySpace not too long ago to see if my account was still there. It was still there.
I got to see if my MySpace account is still there.
But they need to. It's too late. I mean, 13-year-old. I mean, like TikTok. I mean, that's all connected now, right?
I mean, this is what. They want to stop children under 13. They want to make sure that children between the age of 13 and 17 have parental consent before they can even join social media. And what they said they want to do is they want to prevent social media companies from feeding content using algorithms to users under the age of 18. I mean, hey, maybe they should prevent them from having content using algorithms to us, to adults, which it seems to be hurting more than the children.
I mean, protecting the children, the biggest issue in social media for protecting children are the predators that prey on children, actual people that are preying on children on social media. That's what we need to protect them from. I mean, go all the way with video games as well, like all these violent video games, everything else, which I believe is partly responsible for school shootings as well with all these. I mean, we all know that. I mean, we're
Yeah,
feeding on.
yeah, okay.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
sort of,
I mean,
yeah, it's
it
got a bit
normalizes.
of,
Listen, it normalizes violence in a way where children don't think that that's. I mean, that's an okay reality.
yeah, I mean, kinda. I mean,
To
I have this issue, which okay, well, they have video games in Europe, and they have them in Asia, and they have them in Africa,
yeah,
and I don't hear about
sure,
gun violence in any of those places. I
yeah.
think, but
Oh yeah, but
but you're right.
we don't have guns here either.
Yeah, I mean that's the issue. If you may want to
Yeah,
kill somebody, but you don't have a gun
yeah,
because you can't get a gun because of that.
right, right.
But one of the things, this all comes actually after the U.S. Surgeon General said that 13, according to the Surgeon General in the United States, 13 is too young to join social media, and they
Yeah,
want to force social media companies to use age verifications for people. According to the senators authoring this bill, we need to stop the suffering. By instituting these simple, straightforward guidelines, we will be able to give the next generation of our children what every parent wants for their child, a chance to grow up happy and healthy.
well, inevitably this was all coming anyway because the internet is a whole big free world, where you can
I don't know
pretty
what that
much do
means,
the
but
same
okay.
thing you want, and then now they want to regulate that, right?
I mean,
I mean,
yeah,
there's going to be more and more. Uh,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
when we were talking about when we were young, when we used to hide the Sears catalog underneath our beds, and it would fold open right
Sure.
to the lingerie women's underwear section. And now any 12-year-old boy can just go on the web and watch porn. And when you go on
Yeah,
porn, it says, are you really 18? If you're not
yeah,
18, click, no. What 12-year-old
right,
boy is going to click no? So, I mean,
right.
it goes to the fact that not only social media, but so many things that our kids are open to right now. But there was an interesting survey when I started looking into this, because I found this to be fascinating. I started looking into it, and it's a survey that said 57% of high school girls and 29% of boys persistently feel sad or hopeless in 2021, and 22% of those have thought about suicide in a real, really have thought about it seriously. And a lot of it comes down to, and they were asked this question, it comes down to the things that they have to deal with on social media and the stresses they're under by being on, how many likes do I get, and who saw me on Instagram, and who defriended me on Facebook.
Sure. I mean, social media bullying is big. I mean, in Korea, it's huge. I mean, with one of the highest suicide rates in the world, and social media is a huge factor in the generating mental illness here too. I mean, the suicide rate. There's a lot of people, a lot of celebrities, and kids that commit suicide because of the social media
Yeah,
bullying.
I know. Yeah.
It's big here. It's powerful.
Oh,
It's
sure.
powerful. Well, I don't know how what the statistics are in other countries, but in Korea, it's pretty big. It's pretty substantial. Um, and social media bullying to the point of mass depression and even suicide is a known issue here. So,
I mean,
and we even have a lot of, restrictions here as well, you know. So
I mean, there's
that's
been
something to
multiple
consider.
studies that show that social media
That
has
is
been
the
linked
point.
to mental health disorders in teens. I
Sure.
mean, that's something that's really been looked at
Sure.
a lot. And and I could see, because when we were kids, if you wanted to start a rumor about somebody, you could spread it around to half of the third grade class. Now,
Yeah.
if you want to start a rumor about an 11-year-old girl or 12, you can spread it to the world.
Yeah.
And that has,
I used to take videos.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
has got to, and the stupid things that kids do now, to try and get more likes, and
Yeah. That's right.
the fact that now, that your young 11-year-old girl is being watched by a 50-year-old man in India.
Yeah.
That's got to make parents a little, concerned
And
about what their kids are doing.
And openly, not with no shame, just saying whatever they want to say. I mean, it's. I mean, I had a very. The subject is a little bit similar to what happened with one of my pool players in my Wild Blue league or club.
That's in the Philippines, by the
way. He directly contacted this 11-year-old, offered her money. Okay, outside the parent, just direct messaged the 11-year-old through Facebook, through social media, offered her money to purchase billiard equipment. Right? And so we didn't know about that until later.
Okay. All right, that's not so bad.
but that person had the intention to exploit this young person.
Yeah, I could see there's something else going on here.
Money.
Yeah,
for money not used in gambling, okay?
Yeah.
Which is strictly forbidden. And so, but what I'm getting at is that the vehicle of social media with the ability to direct message these children, right?
Yeah.
And with the intent of exploitation. So I mean that's the issue here as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Whether it be sexual,
yeah, I mean it doesn't matter, Yeah, okay. There's the whole sexual aspect of it, but then there's there's so many other parts of this on why I don't disagree with this bill, which is it's surprising because usually these kind of bills I do disagree with, but this one I'm not so sure I disagree with. Now, there is one thing, we got to kind of roll along here, which is another health story that I wanted to disagree with and get your ideas on, Dan. And this is something that has to do with physical health. I mean, before we're talking about mental health. There was a bunch of stories this week. One big story that McDonald's... they offer those super ridiculous size fries now, and now they will be offering its Big Mac secret sauce as a dipping sauce for those fries. And there's nothing that we can do about that. But there is something that I don't know you've come across there in the Philippines, but I have quite a bit because my friend recently joined one of these network clubs in which they sell wellness products. They buy products to sell to their friends, and then they try and get their friends to sell for them. And she, brought me some vitamins, and she wanted me to, buy these vitamins for her. So I looked it up on the web, and it turns out after you scroll down past all the ads and everything, you get to the ingredients, and it turns out that there is a ban on this particular product in Malaysia and Vietnam due to the ingredients that are not what it says on the label. Now, it's not banned in the Philippines, but so that is one of the things that I started looking into this week, partly because of the McDonald's announcement as the secret sauce now that you can use for French fries, but also these wellness products and the use of the word cleansing. And I've been looking at this this fads about I need to cleanse my body. And, you see these things on TikTok and it says, don't detox yourself until you see this video. Yeah. And I started looking into some of these things. And besides these vitamins and things that they sell there in the Philippines, eating bamboo charcoal, drinking salt water, chlorine tea, these heavy laxative Chinese teas, tongue scraping, and everyone is into fasting now. And, as you start looking at what experts say about a lot of these things that people are doing now are not good. The things that they are putting into their bodies. Now, just really quick, there was a study done over a span of 30 years, and it turns out that using a lot of these vitamins and mineral supplements do not do anything that they say. They do not reduce your chances of getting cancer. They do not help you in any way with cardiovascular disease or reduce your chance of death in any way. And it turns out that detoxing, according to a lot of doctors, is a myth. it doesn't even do anything except hurt your body. In fact, there's these things called Senaleaf that everybody's taking now that, they do all this stuff to your bowels and whatever. But it turns out if you take enough of this stuff, then you can't poop without it. That you start having to take it or you can't poop.
Wow.
So anyway, I got into this whole thing about looking into these supplements, especially because, a lot of my friends, they sell these things and all these health trends.
Yeah, actually, I've been seeing a flood of there's a certain one, and I don't think I want to actually say it, but it starts with an Inso something.
Okay.
Right, and I've been seeing that in the social media ad, right? And if you look at the comments, it's crazy. But people are like, "Yeah, I can't believe how much came out of me," and yeah, I lost all this weight, and I'm like, okay, is that supposed to feel good? Is that supposed to be something healthy or good that all this stuff came out of you after you took this stuff? Like, okay, what exactly came out of you?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
So there's a thing that's going on right now on TikTok, and I've seen this video. I've seen it a couple times about chugging salt water. They say chug salt water as fast as you can, and it cleans out your colon. But then these doctors come out and say, you know what? This is really dangerous. This can screw up your bowels. Really bad, and you shouldn't be chugging salt water. There's a reason why we don't drink salt water.
Intermittent fasting too. I used to make a joke about intermittent fasting. I used to call that poor college student intermittent broke, because I did that when I was in college. I didn't eat all day because I didn't have money to eat all day.
Any money.
So I was inadvertently intermittent fasting at the time, and I felt like I was healthier then too. So maybe there is something to that.
I don't know. People spend a lot of money. They spend a lot of money these days to fast, which I find hilarious.
What the heck?
But there's another thing that I saw in there. I can't even believe. And at first you look at it and they make it sound like it does something where you tape your mouth. You put a piece of tape on your mouth and you sleep with tape on your mouth, and it's supposed to give you a better night's sleep. And then this doctor comes out and says, you know what, that can cause cardiac arrest in the middle of your sleep. Things like this can kill you. And that particular one has 40 million views, this thing about taping your mouth. So I'm trying to think of one of the other ones I saw. Oh, you know what? There was another one I saw where a doctor came out and said, you know what, this is really dangerous. And this is called perineum sunning, where you lay, and this is big, this is huge now. You lay naked in the sun and you put your legs up, you put your feet up near your ears, and you let the sun go in your bum hole. And supposedly,
I saw those a while back.
Supposedly that'll give you a blast of energy, that it will keep that area free of germs. And if you just let the 30 seconds of injecting the sun into your bum there, it'll give you a blast of vitamin D.
Wow.
And the doctors are coming out and saying, don't do that. That, you can burn that part of your body, and there's a risk of cancer and some other issues there. So
somebody will come out with a UV light ray that you can shine into your bum so you can do it at home. Somebody will come out with that.
Don't do that. That's a bad idea. But I mean, a lot of these have to do, and I have to say, there's a thing that I saw not too long ago, which was a supplement, one of these gummy supplements that you take, and it's for women, and it makes your private part down there taste better. And I was thinking to myself, women have it hard. I have to say, they are constantly, having to look trimmer, their face be, nicer, the wrinkles, the issues, all these kind of things. You need to make your private parts taste better. So many things that they have to do as a woman. And I just, sometimes I have to say a lot of these things are geared toward women. This whole thing about taping your face, like putting tape to make the wrinkles go away. And they had a woman come on a talk show, a professional, whatever facial woman, say, you know what? It doesn't do anything. In fact, it can actually harm your skin when you rip off the tape. So people, stop putting tape on your wrinkles. It doesn't not really. It may look fine for a few minutes, but but that's it. So anyway, I just thought, when you start thinking about or seeing these things that you see on TikTok or whatever, these trends, these health trends, maybe it might be good to take some of these things with a grain of salt, but don't chug salt water.
This goes back to the social media regulations, like you were just saying. They need to regulate the adults.
Yeah, we need to regulate the adults. Forget the kids. We got to deal with some of these adult things.
Crazy.
Speaking of things that we have to think about regulating, and I know we have talked about this before, is AI intelligence. And I know, Dan, we have been discussing this for the last couple of weeks because they did an update to Chat GPT. There was something that I saw on YouTube just recently, which was on British Got Talent, where this guy comes on and he sings, and they showed the monitor, and the monitor, I don't know if you've seen this, it has the face of Simon, the judge, singing the song, but it's the guy singing, but it's Simon up there actually singing, and it looks unbelievably real. Like, you can't even believe how real it looks. And so, I mean, you can talk and look and sound exactly like someone else, which is why I wanted to bring this story up today, this thing that happened this week. And it has to do with a woman that was sitting outside a dance studio waiting for her younger daughter to finish class. And her older daughter was actually on a ski trip kind of far away. And she got a call from an unknown number on her phone, and she picked it up, and it was her older daughter on the phone. And she screamed and she said, "Mom, I've messed up." And her mom said, "Okay, what happened? Tell me, are you in trouble?" And she talked to her daughter, and the voice was exactly like her daughter, with the inflections and everything. It all sounded exactly like her daughter. And then this man comes on the phone and he says, "Put down the phone and lay your head back." And then he gets on the phone and he says, "Listen, I have your daughter, and if you call the police or call anyone, I'll shoot her up full of drugs, and I'll have my way with her, and I'll take her down to Mexico. You'll never see her again." And then he demands $1 million. And so anyway, the woman freaks out and she runs in the dance studio, calls 911, the police come, whatever, this crazy stuff. However, after 4 minutes of all this crazy stuff happened, she called her daughter's phone number, and her daughter answered and said, "I'm not kidnapped.
That's scary.
I'm just here on the ski trip. Everything's okay, Mom." And I found that to be such a fascinating story.
That's crazy.
And I did a little more investigating into this, and it turns out that there is a program that can look at a video of you, and then it can copy your voice. And you can type in words, and it will say back those words in the voice that it has sampled.
Wow, that's crazy. Because typically you think about automated words, and they speak like a robot, don't they? Like when you, right?
Yeah, before we had that. We had things where you can type in words and it would go, "Hello, yes, welcome to, the World News Jam on DZR." But it couldn't talk like the person. And now,
right.
And then they had ones where you can sound like an Indian, or you can sound like you're Japanese, you can sound like you're Korean, or you can sound like but now you can take a video of someone and then you can sample their voice and how it sounds and the inflections that they have.
I'm surprised that hasn't been developed already. I mean, wasn't developed long earlier.
I said now it's available. It's maybe they were able to do, because you watch these spy shows and they're Mission Impossible, where they're able to completely change his voice into the voice of another person. But now it's back when those were on Mission Impossible, I'm sure that device cost millions of dollars. But now it's like it's on the web. Anybody can do it now. And
The
if you,
concern here is any new technology that we come out with, if someone will find a way to use it for a nefarious purpose,
yeah, I know, I
right?
know. I mean,
I mean, that's our
I,
society the way it is right now. It's just, you know, for self, you know, greed and whatever we come up with, and you know, technology is getting that way anyway. So it's an age old story of anything that gets new invented or made. Somebody will find some way to exploit it
I mean,
for
I
a
was
nefarious
thinking,
purpose.
when I saw this story, I was thinking how I would exploit it. I
Yeah,
could call up people. I could call up somebody and be Dan. I could be
right.
Dan and call up the bank and say, I need you to transfer, $10,000 from my account to Eric Lecain's account, please, with the World News Jam. Yeah. So, I just, I was thinking of all the things that people would do now because we have this, this type of
Right.
technology. And this thing that I saw on British Got Talent. I mean, think of the things that you could do
Yeah.
with something like that.
You could run for president as an 82-year-old and be on TV and not really be there.
I mean, you
And
could
have
have a
AI run
totally
all the
fake
speeches.
president. I mean, the worst thing that you could do is, like, for instance, I could say, I could come on as the Korean president and say, I've decided to go to war with North Korea. I mean,
Yeah.
it would take, I don't know, a couple, in an hour they would figure out that it was a lie. But I mean, in that hour, a lot of things could happen. And I could not believe how this guy looked and, exactly like Simon, and he's up there singing on the thing. But anyway, I mean, I found that to be, a very interesting story. And I mean, and just to kind of wrap things up here, I wanted to continue on our tech, because today we're going crazy with the tech stuff. There was another interesting story. Today we're on tech and old people. So those are our two themes today. There was a story that I found fascinating, and we got to look out for the people who are over 50, because those people hopefully are watching this show. But a new study was released this week that, after a very intensive survey of Americans who are over 50, and this was done by the American Association of Retired Persons, the AARP, and they found that 70% of people over 50 who play video games feel they are not being considered when these games are being developed. And these people are, 50, they say that they make up a significant portion of gamers out there, but developers are not taking notice that they are playing their games. And it turns out that 45% of people over the age of 50 play video games, especially Candy Crush and Wordle.
That makes sense, because that's around about the age when video games first came out and became popular. Me being in that age group,
I played
remember.
video games,
Right. Something
and
that never gives up, right?
and supposedly Wordle took the world by storm in 2021, and most of those are people over 50 who play that video game.
I wish I had the time to do that. I don't even have the time anymore to even sit and consider playing one of those things. I know it's popular, though, Wordle and all of that.
I mean, according to this study, most people over 50, they play on their phones, but there's a big number of them that play on console gamers. In fact, since 2019, that number has gone up a lot. But get this, of the demographic of the people who play video games over the age of 50, it's mostly women.
Oh, wow.
I did
Really?
not see that coming. But that it turns out that more women play than men in the age over 50. Because, you think of video games, you think of young boys playing the video games, they want to shoot guns and so forth. But in the crowd that is in our group there, Dan, it's mostly girls out there that love to play these video games. And they are mad because they want the developers to include them in the things that they write in the video games.
The role-playing part, I'm sure.
So, yeah, I would love to see one of these interviews of these surveys of these old women going, I don't understand why don't you put more pink horses? I don't know. What would women want to ask for? What do women ask for? What do they want in their video games? But anyway, I was thinking about the things that we want and we don't want. One of the things that we have to accept in life, Dan, is that we are out of time. So for me, here on the World Use Jam on DZRJ and RJTV, I am Eric Lecain along with Dan Kang, who is in Korea this week, but very soon we will all be back in the Philippines. Thank you so much for watching the show, and everybody in the Philippines, please be safe out there, and we will see you next week.